The good doctor. The good doctor.
Finally, a tombstone for Frederick Douglass's wife. I wonder when they put this here.
Yes, that wife.
This is recent. Yes. It wasn't here when I was here 2.5 years ago. Right. So, but you know I've been complaining about it. So I think somebody heard me and said, how you gonna get that white woman? Wait a minute, and they shrunk hers down. Check it, that's good. Hers was as large as his.
Get out of here.
So they made her smaller. And they gave Anna Douglas and Annie Douglas one because up until 2 years ago, they was inscribed on the side of his. So you only knew his wife and child was here because their name was on the side. So this got Annie Douglas and this one has Anna. So if you wasn't looking close, you wouldn't even know they were here. But the white woman had a big one like this. So somebody did a good thing. And they made her smaller, like they should, and they gave them their own. But check this out. He passes in 1895. Anna Murray Douglas passes around the 1870s. It took from the 1870s till about 2020 for them to give her a tombstone.
Wow.
And his daughter. And as I was telling my brother, what a lot of people don't know, and we waiting for the chin and we're going to do our libation. But what a lot of people don't know is that Rochester was not kind to Frederick Douglass. They burned his house down.
Right.
They would not let his oldest daughter, Rosetta, go to the white school. After the Civil War, because his sons, Lewis and Charles, they was in the 54th Massachusetts. The movie Glory, Denzel and Morgan Freeman. That movie is about the sons of Frederick Douglass, but it was, how do you want to say this? It was largely, you know how Hollywood do. It's not the truth. What's that word when they take it and they spin it?
Whitewash.
It was whitewash. So Denzel and Morgan Freeman didn't play Lewis and Charles by name.
Truly.
Morgan Freeman actually played the elder Douglas, which I think was Charles, who is the real sergeant major of the 54th. But he doesn't play him by name.
No.
But see, the movie was racist too, because Glory gave the impression that all the blacks who fought in the 54th were runaway slaves. None of the blacks in the 54th were runaway. They were all free. The 54th Massachusetts was a free black regiment. There were no runaway slaves. These was doctors, businessmen, laborers. They made you think that they was all contraband.
They did.
And then, what is his name? Robert Gold Shaw, the commander of the 54th, the white guy.
Yes.
He was a racist. He did not want to be commander of blacks.
Didn't say that.
They have his papers in Boston, and they show you when he was writing home to his mother and father, he was calling us the N-word and all kind of. The movie made you think he cared about black folks. He couldn't stand black folks. And then the movie goes off with them doing what? Losing the battle at Fort Wagner, July 18th, 1863. What they don't tell you is there was a second battle at Fort Wagner after the one they show you in Glory, where we actually won and took the fort. Why did you not show us finally taking the fort? The movie goes off with us losing the first battle, which makes you think it was a futile effort. So, you know, it's interesting. And I'm waiting for somebody to finally do the movie for Frederick Douglass. I spoke on the telephone a couple years ago. What's the brother who played in Ice Cube's barbershop as the pimp in the first barbershop? Smooth talking brother. He's the husband in Greenleaf, the pastor Greenleaf. Keith David was going to play Frederick Douglass.
All right.
A couple years ago, there was a brother who was trying to bring the Frederick Douglass movie to life. He put me on the phone with Keith David. He asked me to be a historical consultant to the movie. But I don't know what happened. They must didn't get the funding But I thought Keith David would have made an excellent
That would've
Frederick
been good.
Douglass.
That would've
And
been
still
good.
would.
His delivery
And
is
still
excellent.
would. I hope to God he ain't got a white woman. But, you know, but this is good here. I'm very shocked to see that they gave Anna Murray Douglass her own tombstone after all these years. You're talking at least 100 years. And Annie,
And the
who
baby.
passed as a child. I think Lewis and Charles might be in the Veterans Cemetery in D.C. I think because they were, you know, Army vets. And they go Helen Pitts. Now, the Helen Pitts thing is interesting, too, because more racism. Most people don't know Frederick Douglass' first wife was black because she gets so much attention that the nearly 50 years that they were together, most folks don't even know.
Right.
When I named the school the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, people were sending me messages, grown people. Why are you naming the school after Frederick Douglass when he had a white wife? True, the second wife was white when he was an old man, but the main wife of 50 years that helped him escape, that managed the Underground Railroad right here in Rochester, who gave him all 5 children, she was a blue, black, purple free woman. Why y'all don't talk about her? You never hear about her. All you keep hearing about is Helen Pitts. The last 12 years of his life. Helen Pitts, Helen Pitts, Helen Pitts. Now, Helen Pitts was a racist because after he died, his children wanted some of his memorabilia. They wanted to say so over the estate. Guess what she says?
No.
Hell no. I'm the wife, I'm the widow, I'm making all the calls. For example, can I ask y'all a question? If Frederick Douglass was born in Maryland, struggled in Maryland, enslaved in Maryland, ran away from Maryland, all his family was from Maryland, my ancestors are still buried in Maryland because I'm related to them. Why would, when he dies in D.C. at Cedar Hill, after being recorder of deeds for D.C., he becomes marshal for D.C., then he becomes resident general and counsel for Haiti. Why would you not leave him in D.C. where there's much more black people than Rochester? Guess who made the decision to bring him back up here? Helen Pitts.
Oh, man.
You see that?
Yeah.
Why would Frederick Douglass not be buried in the area where he was born? Why did you bring him all the way back up here? Most black children will never see him now. You understand? Because not many folks come through Rochester.
But I think we needed them up here. Sorry to cut you off, sir.
I feel you.
We needed them up here because it's more racism in the north. They're crazy up here.
True that, true.
Yeah, but you're right.
And I also read, what was about 2 years ago, there was they moved this statue somewhere and it got desecrated.
Right. Of
They
course, like the
always
houses
do.
got ruined
They
and all
always
that.
do.
Yeah.
Awful.
You know, it's interesting, very interesting. Now, to let y'all know my connection. So first of all, the first known ancestor, and by the way, he's Frederick Bailey by birth, right? We're the Bailey family. Okay. The first known Bailey we have record of is 1701, a black man who's stolen in Nigeria. He was brought over to Talbot County, Eastern Shore, Maryland. He marries a black woman by the name of Selah, for whom my 12-year-old daughter is named. First female ancestor we know. They have Grandma Jenny in 1745. 1774, Grandma Betsy is born. This is 2 years before the Declaration of Independence. So she's the matriarch who would raise him and his cousin Stephen, who's my 4 times great-grandfather. So Grandma Betsy marries a free black man. She's born a slave, but she marries a free black man by the name of Isaac Bailey. I think I found his tombstone in Maryland, but I'm not sure if that's him. They can't really confirm if that's him, but I think I found his tombstone. So you have Isaac free, Betsy enslaved. They have 12 children. One daughter is named Harriet, Frederick's mom. Another daughter is named Young Betsy, my 5 times great-grandma. So these 2 sisters are allegedly raped by the slave master whose name was Aaron Anthony. We cannot confirm if he's the father for certain, but we're pretty firm on it for 2 reasons. When my grandfather died, Stephen Bailey, he was in the Civil War too. Him and his son, my 3 times great-grandfather, these are the cousins of Frederick Douglass. They fought in the U.S. Colored Troops of Maryland, 9th and 19th Regiment. When my grandfather Stephen dies, my grandfather George, his son, who was the first black public school teacher in Denton, Maryland, he writes a letter to the slave master's family, identifying himself as the son of the slave master's son, Stephen. You understand?
Yes.
So the letter suggests that the white man was the father. because he wrote to them as if they were blood family. So that's evidence number one. Evidence number two, when my grandfather Stephen Henry Bailey dies, and he dies in 1894, 1 year before Frederick, the newspapers in Denton called him Frederick's brother. Now remember, for the Bailey, they were cousins.
Yes.
Mothers were sisters.
Yes.
But the newspaper called them brother, which almost makes me believe that they knew the slave master was his dad, because remember, the slave master, Aaron Anthony, raped both sisters. So if they calling them brothers, that's an insinuation the slave master was their dad. Okay? So, but because we can't confirm that, I don't refer to him as Uncle Fred, because he has descendants of his own, and they're very protective, and I don't like to get into the politics, so I just stick with the cousin piece. Because there's people who try to make money off his name and things like that, and when a lot of people think of Frederick Douglass, they think of me, they don't think of him. And I've never done anything for money in his name, you understand? But that's blocking other people who want to exploit his name, you understand? So I just stick with the cousin piece, right? So anyhow, okay, so he's born in February 1818. My grandfather Stephen is born in 1819. And of course, they die a year apart. At my grandparents' 50th anniversary, so Grandpa Stephen marries Grandma Caroline. They're both enslaved. Frederick Douglass comes to the 50th wedding anniversary and presents them with a Bible with all the names of their children in it. So they were very, very close throughout life. So when the Civil War begins, he doesn't fight, but he sends Lewis and Charles. We don't know, at least I don't know, how my grandfathers, Stephen and George, father and son, because they were in Maryland. Remember, the Emancipation Proclamation only freed who? Slaves in states that were in rebellion. If you were a slave state that sided with the Union, your slaves were not free. What states are those? Delaware? Emancipation did not free you in Delaware. Maryland? Emancipation Proclamation did not free you in Maryland. Missouri? Kentucky? And who am I missing? Was it 4 or 5? Delaware, Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky. It might be one more. In fact, Harriet Tubman, who was very close to Frederick Douglass, came through Rochester a lot. And if y'all haven't been to her grave, who's been to the Harriet Tubman grave?
To the house July 5th.
Okay, all y'all need to go. Just Google Harriet Tubman home, Auburn, New York. Her home is a museum. You can go in it. So you want to go to that, and then you want to visit her grave. So Susan B. Anthony, I believe it was, invites Harriet Tubman to an Emancipation Proclamation celebration. Y'all with me? Susan B. Anthony invites Harriet Tubman to an Emancipation Proclamation celebration. It was either Susan B. Anthony or the other white abolitionists. And they were racist too. Because remember, when they started the female anti-slavery society, guess who couldn't join it? Black women. How you got an anti-slavery society and black women cannot join it? Remember, that was Sojourner's Truth issue with a lot of them. That was part of the motivation for Ain't I a Woman? It wasn't just about the sexism. It was about the racism amongst the white women. So anyway, when Susan B. Anthony invites Harriet Tubman to the Emancipation Proclamation celebration, Harriet Tubman said, what am I going to that for? I'm from Maryland. My people still slave. Black power. Black power. She says, what am I going to that for? My people from Maryland, we still in slavery.
Yeah.
I need y'all to get that. Emancipation Proclamation only freed slaves in states who rebelled. If you were not in the Confederate state, you were not free. Not only that, the Civil War was not fought to free us.
No.
The Civil War was fought to strip the political and economic power of the South. Because remember, due to the 3/5 compromise, the South was able to add their slaves to count towards congressional seats, population. So every 5 slaves, they got 3 additional population number. You follow me? So because most of the slavery was in the South, that gave the South a political advantage that the North did not like. So that the only reason why Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation was to, how do you say this, imbalance the power dynamic and make sure that the slaves, enslaved Africans, because I hate to say slave, we should say enslaved, they wanted to make sure that they couldn't use all of them in the war. You understand? Because they like, if we got to fight the white man and then we got to fight all his enslaved Africans, we got to do something about that.
Yes.
In fact, when our ancestors were running away from the Confederate States to the north, Abraham Lincoln ordered his generals to do what? Return the contraband to their masters.
Where they came from.
This is during the war. Abraham Lincoln said, take them back to their slave master. It had nothing to do with freeing us.
At all.
And while the war was being fought, which was won by black people, we won the war. Get any book on the testimonials of the generals and the captains and the soldiers of the Civil War, they will tell you, if it wasn't for the blacks, we would have lost. The only reason why Abraham Lincoln let us in is he had no choice. Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Martin Delany, they were all saying, listen, y'all can be racist all y'all want. Y'all about to lose your whole damn country over racism. And then even when he authorized the enlistment of black soldiers, they would only use us in the beginning to dig trenches, manual labor. We were basically slaves.
Fighting, yes.
Exactly. Till it got so bad,
Now we need
they
you.
had to let us fight.
We need you.
Now, let me tell you how history could have been different. What if when Confederate General Robert E. Lee, he surrenders at Appomattox in Virginia. By the way, my grandfather, George Washington Bailey, first black public school teacher, he was at the Battle of Appomattox. So my ancestors was there when the Confederacy surrendered. What if we didn't stop fighting? What if we would have said to ourselves, if we good enough to beat the Confederacy, why are we not good enough to beat the Union?
We could beat them all.
That's one of those what-ifs of history. What if we would have kept going, y'all? Who knows? We might have a couple states of our own. Because if we can whip the South, why the hell can't we whip the North? And what a lot of people don't know is there was a lot of African immigrants in the Civil War. It wasn't just enslaved American Africans. No. Remember, when the Haitian Revolution begins in 1791, the French slave masters fled Haiti because they were scared of Toussaint L'Ouverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. They come to the French territories in America, you see, and so, or former territories at that point, right? And so a lot of them offered up their enslaved French Africans to the Civil War so they themselves wouldn't have to serve. Did anybody see the movie starring Will Smith, Emancipation, on Apple TV? Make sure y'all go see Emancipation on Apple TV. It's a true story about a Haitian. He's a Haitian brother who served in the Civil War. There was also other African immigrants who were coming to America for different reasons who ended up in the Civil War as well. And guess what? There were black men already organizing themselves into military regiments before Abraham Lincoln authorizes the rise of the troops, because they said, whether he let us in the war or not, we gonna fight for our freedom. So some of those regiments that were in the Civil War that were black, they were not U.S. colored troops and they were not state troops. They were black men who organized themselves to fight, which takes us to Juneteenth. What's the story of Juneteenth? They say General Gordon Granger, the white man, came in to save the day. He read Special Order Number 3 that freed the blacks in Texas. Well, guess what? The blacks in Texas was going to get freed anyway because black men said, we marching. In fact, they were already in Texas liberating their people when Gordon Granger shows up. So we was already freeing our people. Whether he came or not, he just put the cherry on top by decreeing it. So we really got to know our history, because I tell children all the time, and at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, I'm the history teacher. I'm the history teacher.
Right.
But I tell our children, Abraham Lincoln did not free the slaves.
Nope.
Abraham Lincoln did not free the slaves. The slaves freed Abraham Lincoln. You understand that? America is still America because we saved it during the Civil War. Otherwise, you would have two countries, one North, one South. Black people kept America a single unitary country. We saved Abraham Lincoln, because guess what was Abraham Lincoln doing the last 2 years of the Civil War? Negotiating with countries around the world to do what? sent all the black folks. He wanted all of us out the country. Abraham Lincoln said black folks will never make it in this country. It won't work. We got to get them out. They was going to send us to Panama. They was going to send us to Mexico. They was going to send us to Haiti. They was going to send us all back to Liberia. If you don't believe me, do your research. Abraham Lincoln was trying to broker a deal so as soon as we won the Civil War for him, we would all be put on ships and bust the hell out of here. But when you watch that Abraham Lincoln movie done by Steven Spielberg, you don't get the truth about Abraham Lincoln. He couldn't stand black folks, even though he had African ancestry himself. Abraham Lincoln's one of his grandparents or great-grandparents was an African. And when you do watch this Steven Spielberg movie, you know what they do show you? During a debate on slavery in Congress, one of the congressmen stands up and they call him Abraham Africanus. Yes, in the movie. Watch the movie. There's a scene they're debating and they call him Abraham Africanus. Now, what do we know about Abraham Africanus? This was how do you want to say this? An insult that the Democrats hurled at Abraham Lincoln secretly. If you go back to that period, you'll see pictures of him looking almost as dark as me. They emphasized his blackness because they was exposing the secret that he himself was his African heritage. See? So Barack Obama wasn't the first black president. He the first one who couldn't hide. Calvin Coolidge had African ancestry. Alexander Hamilton wasn't a president, but he had African ancestry. George Washington had African ancestry. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Calvin Coolidge, who was president when the Honorable Marcus Garvey got incarcerated. He also had a black grandmother or great-grandmother, right? Which is interesting because when we talk about reparations, there's some brothers and sisters who say reparations should be based on lineage. Do you have a lineage to slavery, right? Well, guess what? You got about 25% of white folks in this country who had an ancestor on the plantation because their great-great-great-grandfather, who was white, raped one of his field hands, and that field hand is their great-great-great-great-grandmother, but because of the lightening of the complexion, as generations went on, they passed as white, and they lived as white people, and they live as white people today. So if you say reparations should be based on lineage, you're going to see white folks popping out the woodwork from everywhere, not saying they black, because they don't have to say they black. They just have to prove I had an ancestor in slavery. Which is why I support race-based reparations. It should only be given to African people, to black people, not lineage. Lineage allows people who are not black, who had an ancestor who was enslaved, to apply for their reparations money. We got to do some rethinking on the chessboard. Check on that gin for me, Baba. Check on that gin. I'm waiting on some gin. And what we're going to do, we're going to pour libation. That's the traditional African way of honoring our ancestors. For those of you who may be Muslim or Christian or Hebrew, I need you to understand that in Africa, we do not worship our ancestors. We honor them, we praise them, we venerate them. Worship is reserved only for Almighty God. In African culture, the ancestors were created by God to look after their family after they depart. In other words, 10 minutes. In other words, our ancestors are our angels. The same function that the angels have in the Bible, that is the function that the ancestors have in your life. Your grandmom who died, she's still in your house. Your cousin, your niece, your nephew, your brother. We don't die. There's no such thing as death. I know the cross says whoever believes in Jesus shall have everlasting life, which is fine, no disrespect, but if you African, you already have everlasting life, because nobody dies. You only transition or graduate to a higher level of reality. So we believe that in order for us to have a successful life and a good life on earth, not only do we worship God, we have to also honor our ancestors, because they have a power that can help you and they have a power that can heal you. But if you do not respect them, if you do not acknowledge them, those same spirits that can help you can also harm you as punishment, because neglecting the ancestors is one of the most disrespectful things you can do in African society, in African culture. It is not ancestor worship, it is ancestral veneration. The reason we use gin, we use rum, because within alcohol, and this is why they call them spirits, within alcohol there is an essence There's an essence in the alcohol that attracts positive spirit. And so you pour the gin because it evokes the ancestors, those under the ground, those in the ocean, as well as those who are up in heaven. All right? And even each one of you, before you came into this world, you had a group of ancestors in heaven known as Egbe, whose job is to help guide you in this life to make sure you fulfill your divine purpose. Because all of us negotiated a reason for being alive with God before you came through your mother. So there's no such thing as an illegitimate child. If you were born, you're not illegitimate. Every person born has a divine purpose that they have to find and they have to fulfill it. Frederick Douglass knew his purpose. He knew it very young in life. He found it, he fulfilled it. Every last one of us have to find our purpose and we have to fulfill our purpose. But in order to do that, we got to tap into our ancestors because we come from God through who? The ancestors. Okay, God is up there, we down here. Between us and God is an invisible chain of DNA. That's your ancestors. There's no getting around them, and the sooner you acknowledge their presence, the sooner you honor them, the sooner you pour some water out for your ancestors, you'll be surprised what they can do for you in your life. They serve God by helping us in this life achieve our destiny. Any questions while we waiting on the gin?
What year was he born?
Frederick Douglass was born 1818.
Got one 1817 up here.
That's incorrect. You will also see 1819. Incorrect. The only way I know that for sure is because in our family reunion book, we have a picture of the slave ledger of the master. You know, they recorded their sales. And he was listed as February of 1818, but the day is not there. He chose the 14th, Valentine's Day, right? But the month is correct and the year is correct, 1818. You also find his name spelled wrong sometimes as well. It's spelled correctly here, Frederick, right? That's the correct spelling, but sometimes you'll see it spelled wrong as well. Hold that thought. He had a second. I'm gonna come right to you.
You going to the Harriet Tubman?
Not today. When we done here, I got a meet and greet at the East High School. You guys are welcome. And then I have to keynote a graduation ceremony for young folks in a particular program. And then I'm back to the airport because I got to speak at Marcus Garvey's birthday celebration in Atlanta tomorrow. I spoke at Marcus Garvey's birthday celebration last night in Harlem. So I just flew up to you guys from Newark, New Jersey this morning. Then I got to fly right back, drive back to Philly, try to get that 9 o'clock flight. If I miss it, I got to take the early flight. Also, if you've never been to the Nat Turner Trail, that's another place you need to go. I know it's in Virginia. That's a nice little ride. You got to go. Go to natturnerlibrary.com. natturnerlibrary.com. Every August the 21st, which is the day that the Nat Turner War started. It's also the day the Haitian Revolution started. It's also the day Emmett Till showed up in Money, Mississippi. It's also the day that George Jackson, Soledad brother, led the slave insurrection on August the 21st, 1971. We celebrate Nat Turner on the day that his war started. Every year. I've been going down there for about 13 years. I think I missed 2 of them, so I've probably been down there 11 times. So you got to go to that Nat Turner Trail and relive it. The Elder Khalifa, he will take you on a tour where Nat Turner lived, the church where he used to preach at. He will also take you to where his wife Cherry lived, because you know, and I don't know if you saw Birth of the Nation movie with Nate Parker. Did y'all see Birth of a Nation? Came out in 2016. Make sure y'all see that. Nate Parker did. He did a good job, even though he got a snow bunny. He did a good job with the movie. But in the movie, he doesn't show you that Nat Turner's wife and children were tortured and murdered. They murdered his wife and children. I did not know that. So Nat Turner doesn't have, from my understanding, he doesn't have any living descendants. He have living relatives. Like I'm a relative to Frederick Douglass, but I'm not a descendant. Nat Turner doesn't have descendants. Harriet Tubman didn't have any children. So she has relatives, but she doesn't have descendants. You see, but if y'all get a chance, you want to visit that Nat Turner Trail, that's something that you definitely want to see. One of the things I'm going to be working on is I'm going to be working on a tour of different landmarks in the Black experience, like a week long, and we go to different places around the country to put us in touch with our landmarks. One of the things that I'm very disappointed about with regard to our landmarks is the fact that we don't own most of them. Carter G. Woodson House, the father of Black history, that's owned by the U.S. Park Service. Frederick Douglass House in D.C., U.S. Park Service. The only prominent landmark I'm aware of that we still own is Harriet Tubman's home over in Auburn.
That's not owned by the Park Service?
Now,
Oh.
AMEZ Church,
Right.
African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, are the custodians of the Harriet Tubman house.
Okay.
And I pray they never turn it over to the U.S. government.
They try to get it.
I pray they don't turn it over to the U.S. government. If you're able to get to Maryland, make sure you go to the Great Blacks in Wax Museum, National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. Also the Frederick Douglass Childhood Home Tour. That's a good one to check out. Anybody been to the Smithsonian yet? National African American Museum that they opened up a few years ago. The Government Museum in DC, the big one. That's the new main one. It's about 5 years old now. It's worth going because it's a lot of information in it, but I have issues with it. And my issues with the Smithsonian is this. They spent $500,000 on that museum. Excuse me, $500 million, 500 million. $500 million. There's no exhibit to black women. There's no exhibit to black educators. There's no exhibit to police brutality. Maybe it's one since I've been there. I was last there about a year ago. There's no exhibit to the black inventors. You might see some inventors, but I'm talking about an exhibit. The way the museum looks, y'all, and it's beautiful, but it's incomplete. You start out in the basement. They give you slavery. They don't give you Africa before slavery.
No, my God.
They give you slavery. They give you Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and then what's on the top two floors? Basketball and entertainment, sports and entertainment. So if I'm coming to America to learn about black people, let's say I'm Chinese, I'm East Indian, I'm an Arab, I'm a European Jew, I'm a Mexican, I want to learn about the black tradition. They start me in slavery. These Negroes didn't know slavery was better for them. They fought to get free. And after they got free, they started dunking, running on the football field, and making rap music.
Let's make a snow bunny. Get a snow bunny.
Here's the problem that I got. Michael Jordan got a life-size statue. It's beautiful. Harriet Tubman ain't got one. Venus and Serena got beautiful statues. But guess what? Frederick Douglass ain't got one. He got a smaller little short one. Nat Turner ain't got no statue. But guess who got a statue in the Black Museum? Thomas Jefferson. What is he doing with a statue in our museum? So even though they tell you he owned 400 or 500 slaves, they got a big statue worshiping him. How does he get a statue? Ida B. Wells ain't got no statue. Fannie Lou Hamer ain't got no statue. But Venus got one. Michael Jordan. LeBron James got a big screen TV with all his dunk highlights. Why is that in a black museum? Go to the Jewish museum. I want you to go to the Jewish Holocaust Museum and tell me if Seinfeld got a floor of his own or a TV of his own. No other race would allow a museum to have 2 whole floors of goofy athletes and useless entertainers. They got a pair of Nike Air Force Ones with Barack Obama's face on them in a glass case in the African American Museum. We don't own Nike, and we damn sure don't own Obama. So I take issue with the museum. $500,000? $500,000? You know how many black people you could have put to work with $500,000? You know how many schools you could have built with $500,000? But that's what you got to understand about the U.S. power structure. They will spend money on anything except your liberation. Did y'all see what Joe Biden signed into law last week? The Emmett Till Act. He's going to put 3 statues of Emmett Till around the country.
And what does that do?
What does that do for black people? 3 statues. Now, mind you, the white woman who got Emmett Till lynched and killed, they never locked her up. She died free, even though they had an unserved bench warrant that they found in the basement of the police precinct. She don't get locked up, even though you start the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. So what good is the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill if it can't even lock up the white woman that was at the root of the whole thing? But I'm gonna give him 3 statues. Now let's talk about the statues. Did you know that more than half of all the statues built in America of our ancestors are made by non-black people?
I did.
Malcolm X statue in the Malcolm and Betty Shabazz Center where Malcolm was killed, the Audubon Ballroom, that was not made by a black person. In Philadelphia, we got a brand new Harriet Tubman statue. Guess what? They let a white man make it. If you go all around the country, all of our ancestors and heroes, they always find a non-black artist to recreate our people. So even in death, we don't get no justice. Now let me tell y'all about the school, because I don't think this is a coincidence that I'm here. Today is February 18th, excuse me, August 18th. We completed the renovations on the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy August 11th. So all the renovations are done, thank God, after 4 years of hell, right? So now we gotta wait on the HVAC inspection. We gotta wait on the certificate of occupancy. We're gonna have a painting. We'll be a donor to the school. We invite you to come down and help us paint the school. It's a one-level school, it's modern, it has 15 classrooms in it, and I'm gonna be choosing a day for those who wanna come down and help us paint. We're gonna have some music, we're gonna have fun, and paint up all the classrooms.
What date is this?
I haven't chose the date.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna give y'all my phone number in a
Yeah,
minute,
okay.
so you can text me with your name. I'm gonna lock you in my phone, and then once I have the date, I'll text you the flyer. And if you're on social media, y'all can follow me because I'm gonna drop it on there. But you gotta be a donor. So for those of y'all who haven't donated, you make sure you donate. I don't care if it's 20 bucks. You give us some damn money so we can educate these black boys.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
When you text me, I'm gonna text you that donation information. So, the school is in Wilmington, Delaware, right? And we have two schools right across the street. The Marcus Garvey Elementary School, that's the one we just finished. And we got the much larger Frederick Douglass High School across the street. Totally independent. All the money came from black people from all over the world. And it wasn't just us, y'all. Africa donated heavily. The Caribbean donated heavily. Canada donated heavily. Blacks in France and Paris. This was the first school in American history that was literally built by the money of Africans from the entire world. Okay? So, once we get it painted up and do the floors, and if anybody knows somebody who do floors, let me know. We're gonna have a community grand opening. So there'll be a paint day. Then we're gonna have a cleanup day. And then for my fellas, we're gonna have a furniture day to move the new furniture in. Desks, chairs, all that. And I'm looking at having a grand opening for the community Kwanzaa, this Kwanzaa, which is December 26th to January the 1st. I don't know if we're gonna do every day of Kwanzaa, every other day of Kwanzaa, or just one day of Kwanzaa. That decision still has to be made. If for whatever reason, we're not ready for Kwanzaa, we're looking at Dr. King's birthday in January, or we're looking at the first Saturday in Black History Month, February. Okay, but we got 3 months till Kwanzaa. It's tight, but still doable. Okay, but at this point, it took us this long, ain't no need to rush in the 12th hour. Get it done right. And if all goes well, we're gonna open up school next year. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade black boys. Okay, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. And then every year we're gonna add a grade up and add a grade down. So that means the 2nd year, it'll be 1st through 5th. 3rd year will be K through 6th. 4th year will be pre-K through 7th. And the 5th year will be daycare through the 8th grade. And that gives us enough time to get the Frederick Douglass High School ready, okay? We're gonna have 2 buses coming from Maryland, Baltimore, where Frederick Douglass escaped, Eastern Shore, where Frederick Douglass was born. Every day a bus. A bus from Philadelphia, a bus from Chester, PA, where Dr. King went to college. There's gonna be a bus from Dover, Delaware, a bus from Wilmington. Who am I leaving out? Camden, New Jersey will get a bus, and Trenton, New Jersey will get a bus, because where Wilmington, Delaware is, it's where Southern New Jersey, Southern Pennsylvania, and Northern Maryland all meet. So we'll be able to serve boys in 4 states. Within 3 to 5 years, we're going to add the girls. We will have a girls academy too. The Anna Douglass and Amy Garvey Princess Academy will be coming soon. And we also will be working on a virtual academy. So if you're in Rochester and you want your son to be at the FDMG Academy, but obviously you can't commute 5 hours every day, you'll be able to get on his laptop, zoom into the classroom, and participate. We also looking at purchasing some homes in the neighborhood and turning them into dorms. So if you want to send your son down, then he could be with us during the week, and we put him on the plane or the train to come home on the weekend. So we're looking at different ways to do different things. And once the school is done, we're looking at building FDMGs all over the country. That is our plan. Now let me tell you about Wilmington. Interesting. We bought the school February the 7th of 2019. Frederick Douglass was born what? 1818. His bicentennial was when? 2018. That means we bought the school 1 week before the bicentennial year expired. Guess what else? Marcus Garvey's Black Star Line steamship was incorporated in 1919. Where was it incorporated at? Wilmington, Delaware. We bought the school when? 2019, the centennial of the Black Star Line. I don't think it's no coincidence we got that school during his bicentennial in the centennial of the Marcus Garvey Black Star Line. Mind you, Frederick Douglass escaped from Baltimore through where? Wilmington, Delaware. On the way to Philly, up to New York. That's when he changed his name from Fred Bailey to Fred Douglass. And not only that, Harriet Tubman spent a lot of time in Wilmington, Delaware. Her main European financial benefactor was a white man named Thomas Garrett. When was he born? August 21st, a Caucasian. He was Harriet Tubman's main supporter. When Harriet Tubman freed her parents, y'all heard that story when she heard her mother and father was going to be sold south to helping blacks run away. They were free at the time. The slave master made them free after his death, I believe. But they were going to be sold because they was helping blacks on the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman finds out, she runs to Wilmington, Delaware. Thomas Garrett gives her a cart. She takes the cart to Maryland by herself, straight up to the slave house, throw her mother and father in the cart, and get right back to Wilmington, Delaware. You talk about some damn guts. Harriet Tubman was it. Harriet Tubman was it, y'all. I love that woman to death. And don't sleep on Harriet Tubman, because even though her first husband, okay, the first husband she married, he thought she was killed or captured or wasn't coming back, so he married another woman. So Harriet Tubman remarried a brother who was 20 years younger than she was. Hey! She had to stay young. She had to stay young. And check this out. And you learn this when you go to the Harriet Tubman house. And you know, Harriet and Fred was real close. And there's a rumor that Harriet Tubman might be a cousin of ours, because Harriet Tubman's parents was from Caroline County. My family is from Talbot County. So some say they came in on the same slave ship and may have come from the same African village. But when you go to the Harriet Tubman home, did y'all know she opened up a home for elderly blacks up there? And then she opened up a hospital for the elderly blacks up there. And then she opened up a farm to raise animals to pay for the house and the home. This is a black woman who was illiterate, and she built 3 institutions. Here we are with $2 trillion, and we ain't got an institution to our own. Look how much guts and courage our people have back then. We got to get the spirit back, y'all. We got to get the spirit back, because we losing. We losing. America has given up on hiding its racism towards black people. Okay? We are back in the 1960s, and part of this is our fault, because we let Barack Obama rock us to sleep for 8 years. And while we were sleeping, celebrating him, America was reorganizing herself to become more racist and even more discriminatory towards blacks. And by the time Obama walked out of office, Trump wakes you up from your sleep with the damn alarm bell. And we've been struggling ever since. And people say, why Joe Biden ain't doing nothing for black folks? Why Joe Biden taking care of the migrants and the Ukrainians? He's taking care of the Afghanis. He's taking care of the gays. He's taking care of everybody else. You know why? Who is Barack Obama's vice president? And then he sit there and watch black people worship Barack Obama for doing absolutely nothing. So if I'm a white man, okay, and I'm the vice president to the black man, and I saw the black man do nothing for black people for 8 years, and they still celebrated him like he was Superman or Batman, why the hell am I going to risk my relationships with white people to help black people when y'all didn't even make the black man do nothing? We created this problem. We created a situation where you may never see another president in American history take black people seriously again, because we allow Barack Obama to ignore us and we celebrate them for doing it. Our grandkids are going to pay for that. And I know we got a presidential election coming up. I don't endorse presidential candidates, never did, and I never will, brothers and sisters, but I think we need to get off the Republican Party plantation, and I think we need to get off the Democratic Party plantation, and I think we need to either build our own political party or start our own political union. You cannot keep being a secondary thought of a white establishment. It's never going to get you nothing. The reason the black politicians in Rochester can't do nothing for you is because they belong to the Democratic Party. They have to take orders from their party bosses. You're never going to get nothing from a black person who's running around waving a Democratic banner or a Republican banner. You got to be independent. If you're not running as an independent, you're useless.
You make a good point. If you want to nominate yourself for that position,
no sir.
Who right now, off the top, that you would nominate, who is in position to help us in the industries that we need to, you know, have that control to change the world? Who would you nominate right now?
Well, firstly, all politics is local, right? Yeah. So the first thing we got to do is in Rochester, because I'm not a part of the community per se. I am, but through distance. Right. The black community in Rochester needs to start having political action meetings where y'all discuss who would be a good black mayor here. Who would be a good black state rep here? Who would be a good black council person here? Who would be a good black U.S. congressman, representative here? You see that? And so if we pick you, hypothetically, we pick her, we pick him, we choose the whole slate. Now we got the financing. Because the problem with black folks is we don't finance our own candidates. So you can't control them after they win. You got to finance them. Because if I want to be mayor in Rochester, right? No matter how honorable my intentions, if I got to get money from the banks in Rochester, I got to get money from the car dealership in Rochester, I got to get money from the white millionaires in Rochester. Good looking. We got two of them or just one? Okay. Good looking, King.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. But if I got to get all this money from white folks in order to help black people, when I win, am I free?
No.
Hell no. You see what I'm saying? Right. So we not only have to vote black, we got to finance black to make sure the black people stay loyal to us.
Okay, but not so. I feel like that's like a little shortcut answer. Okay, that's gonna take time to do what you actually.
Everything we got to do.
I'm talking about an immediate.
There is no immediate.
Okay, we understand that an immediate candidate that you think is in position financially and in power in the world. I know, but just someone that we can root for, like you said, since Garvey and Douglas, we haven't had nobody to instantly, other than people like yourself, to kind of like put our energy behind. Like you said, we can't go Democrat or we can't go Republican.
Right.
That's out the window. But that other stuff that you talk about, vote locally and stuff,
yes,
is time consuming. Who can we right now empower and get behind and say, yo, the election is coming up. We want to put our vote behind you right now, even though we ain't got time to investigate all that you about. All we know is that you about us first and foremost.
Right.
Let's go. Who do we have in that department?
If we're going to do it, we got to do it. Right. But see, I hear what you're saying. The urgency. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But you know what our problem is? We don't value the process of organization.
Right.
You see, it's not just go get him. He got to be vetted. He got to be researched. Who's going to be on this team to make sure we hold him accountable? You understand? Because if I make you the mayor, you can be damn sure your chief officer in your office is going to be somebody who I know going to let us know if you ain't doing what you're supposed to do. So we got to run that whole thing down. And even bigger than that, we got to look at who owns you. What are your ties? What's your criminal background? What's your economic background? It's a thorough investigation, right? And then we have to come up with the funding scheme, because we don't want you taking money from nobody black. And we don't even want you taking money from black people if they bourgeoisies. You see what I'm saying? So we got to go through the prop. Marcus Garvey said the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. You see that? We got to get organized. The reason white folks and Asians and Arabs and everybody else is outpacing us isn't because they're smarter, they're more organized. We ain't organized at all. Black men ain't organized. Black women aren't organized. Black parents aren't organized. I'm an educator. For the life of me, I'm still trying to find out why we still don't have a national black teachers union. All the hell black teachers catching these public schools, and they are still a part of the what? White teachers union.
We don't stick together.
We don't stick together. And you know what it all goes back to? Slavery. Slavery stripped us of our natural desire, to want to be in control of our destiny. On the plantation, you had no control over your destiny. You did whatever the master said. Your whole life was based on his best interest. You could be alive today, you could be dead in 2 minutes for saying the wrong thing. So there was never a need for long-term planning and systemic organization. And unfortunately, old habits die hard. And that's why even now, black people don't have an eye to the future. We are very much about the next couple of years, if that long. We don't plan 20, 40, 50-year plan. There's not a black organization in America with a 50-year plan. But I can show you 10 Chinese organizations with an 100-year plan. I can show you a Jewish organization with a 500-year plan, and we just trying to get to retirement. You see, we got to get organized. I understand why some black folks are tired of meeting. Because when we meet, the meetings are never disciplined. They never structured. They get all, how we talking about this? I thought I came here for this. Why we talking about this? I thought I came here for this. Or you going to sit there and let him dominate the whole meeting with his ego? You see what I'm saying? So we got to get the meetings organized. Every time we have a meeting, You a sergeant of arms, he a sergeant of arms. If Bobby get off task, I got to act, brother, we got to come outside and talk to you. You messing this meeting up, bro. We not here to talk about that. You had 5 minutes, you went into 20. We gonna let you back in here, but if you do that shit again, bro, you can't come back. You gotta have that, because black people don't have respect for other blacks. I see it when I travel the world. I'll be signing books. Somebody will be in the line. They want to have a conversation. We can have a quick conversation, but it's 50 people behind you. We can't talk for an hour. They will stand there and try to talk to me for an hour with 50 people. How do you do that when your brothers and sisters right behind you? We do not take each other into account, and we got to change that, because until we get organized, we will never thrive. We surviving. I don't just want to doggy paddle. I want to swim upstream.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to combine, let's say the Dr. UMARs, and that's another thing. How do I pronounce your new name, and what does it stand for?
Dr. Umar's still fine, but IFATUNDE,
Okay.
which means destiny has returned.
Okay.
That's the African name I got back in 2011 at the Oyotunji African Village in South Carolina. It's actually IFATUNDE Oguntade, but I just largely use the IFATUNDE now. We're going to go into the libation because the time is with us.